תן אחרית לעמך, תשיב מקדש לתוכנו, תרומם מרומרים, תקומם קרן גדועה, תצימח השקעיבי, תפאר יושבת בדד, תעטה במלוכה לבדיך, תשיא חרפה מאיר.
Hello everyone. Every fast day, there is a machloket why we fast. According to the Rambam, it's not a goal in and of itself, but rather it's actually a means to a bigger goal, and that is to use the day in which you're hungry to think and contemplate about your actions, and to hopefully emanate from a day like this a better Jew, doing tshuva for whatever you think you need to do repentance for. But according to the Shulchan Aruch, on the other hand, we fast on these days only because of the tragic events that happened on these days. Whether it's this or that, there's no question that Shiva, Asar, BeTamuz starts a 3-week mourning period that climaxes with Tisha B'Av. The question is as follows. I understand why there could be a machlokas why we fast on Shiva, Asar, BeTamuz. But why do we mourn for 3 weeks? Usually you mourn for something that you have and no longer have. But as my dear neighbor Mark Struhl once told me, how can you mourn for something you never had? None of us ever saw a Beis HaMikdash. None of us ever saw a Jerusalem with the temple in its midst. So how are we supposed to mourn at this period of time? And I believe the answer will be a great way to start the new series that I'm going to call Living as If. And I'd like to explain why. In the very first chapter of the Code of Jewish Law, Subdivision 3, Rav Yosef Karo decides to write, Ra'ui lechol yirei shamayim, any God-fearing Jew, it's appropriate, sheyeh meitzer v'doeg al chuban Beit HaMikdash, that he should be sorry and worried about the destruction of the temple. We're talking about the halachot called Hanhagat Adam Baboker, literally, what do you do when you first wake up in the morning? What should be your first thoughts and your first actions? And literally, 3 lines into it, the Shulchan Aruch brings up that you should be worried and you should be saddened by not having a Beis HaMikdash. We never had one. So how are we supposed to get to that level? And I believe the answer is every time you've ever learned the word ki'ilu. In modern Hebrew, as well as in the Gemara, it means as if. Many a times we have an as if within the Gemara and Chazal. If I can bring 2 examples that are very well known, the end of Masechet Menachot says that if you say the korbanot and you learn the laws of sacrifices, then it's ke'ilu, you actually brought the sacrifices. Or Masechet Avot that says 3 people that sat at a table and said Divrei Torah, ke'ilu achlu mishulchano shel makom baruch hu, it's like they ate a sacrifice off the altar. And so on and so forth. There are so many examples. And that, in my opinion, is exactly what we're mourning for, starting on Shiva Asar BeTamuz. Namely, we're not living in the real world that we should. We're living in an as-if world. We have a dining room table in place of an altar. We have a shul in place of the Beis HaMikdash. But it's not the real thing. It's as if. And just to give one example of many, the Torah, in his Code of Jewish Law, this is not a drasha, says, why is it that the bracha after eating an apple is borei nefashot rabot v'chesronan? Namely, you've made many souls and what they're missing. Explains the Torah, and I quote his words, v'chol ma shehem chaserim v'al kol shar dvarim shebara ba'olam shelo hayu hanefashot chaserim mehem im lo bera'an she'enan ela lihitaneg bahem la'chayot nefesh kol chai. Namely, you can live without a good apple or orange, but God created them in order for you to enjoy them. And indeed, the Yerushalmi says that just like you're going to stand before God and give an accounting after 120 years on your mitzvot versus your averot, you're also going to give an accounting on beautiful things that God created and you didn't enjoy. From this perspective, comes along the Mishnah in Sota and says as follows: Miyom shecharav Beit HaMikdash, from the time that the temple was destroyed, Ein yom she'ein bo klala, there is no day without a curse. V'lo yarad atar livracha. Actually, even the dew didn't come down and give a blessing to the world like it should. V'nital tam hapeirot, and the real taste of the fruits has been taken. So you thought your whole life that you're eating a good pink lady apple, or you're eating a Jaffa orange, and this is Tam Gan Eden. You should know it's as if. It is not the real thing. What we're mourning for at this period of time is to think together, how do we get back to the real thing? And the only way I believe we're going to be able to give it some thought is if we start enumerating all the as-ifs and ask ourselves, are we at the real thing? And if we're not, how far are we from it? In order to establish that, we have to basically A, quote it, B, see the scope of it. How far does it go? So if you're going to say that your dining room table is like a mizbeach, like an altar, are you allowed to build it in the way that the altar is not allowed to be built? Or are you restricted by the same laws? And based on that, we will be able to understand what we're missing. If we establish all the as-ifs that we're living with, I believe we'll get an appreciation of what we are missing, and therefore our mourning would become all the more substantial.